Okay, everyone, we are going to talk about the one time I crossed the line. And when I say one time, I mean exactly that. I mean, I only did it that one time and I never did it again in my entire life. So that's want to say that up front. But that being said, when people say, I only did it once, like that excuses it or something. So I don't want to give that impression because anytime we act in a manner that's not becoming of our character, we need to reflect on that. So, and I also hate when people go, I don't condone violence. And then you find out they've done violent things in their life. I'm like, either you condone it or you convert to it. I mean, we can't have it both ways. So, with this one, I'm going to tell you about this gentleman that I met and actually did evolve into a relationship. But you're also going to see how and why that relationship dissolved. Okay. So we're gonna call this guy Will because we'll never know what could have been. Okay. And just to let you know, I met him through a blind date. So similar to an online one, but back in the day we didn't have online. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that. So I just happened to be mentioning, I was at an event and I happened to mention to a friend of mine that, it would be nice to meet someone and, you know, date and get involved. And she says, um, I I can't believe you said that because I was thinking about that for you. And I'm like, okay. And she said, no, Sherry, I got the perfect guy for you. Anyone knows in their right mind, whenever someone says, I've got the perfect guy, my first thought is, then why aren't you with them? But we won't go there. So she said, he's a friend of mine and he was just saying the same thing. So I think it's fate that this week you're saying it. And he was just telling me that. She said, and I wanted to tell him about you at that time. So I was like, okay, what's the catch? And she said, no, I'm telling you, you're like him. So anyway, I s- she asked me if it would be okay for her to give him my phone number and, ask him if it would be okay, if she gave me his. So I was like, well, that's fine. Now, if you remember, you know, anyway, we didn't have, like I said, cell phones. We couldn't look each other up or do any of that stuff. The internet wasn't a thing yet. So, about a couple of days after she had given him my number, he called me and we had a good conversation actually. We talked a little bit about what our interests were just to see if we had anything in common and how familiar we would probably be with each other if we were to make a date. So we did exactly that. Um, and any of you guys who have seen my previous videos, you already know my dates are not going to know where I live. I don't necessarily need to know where they live. Until I get to know them better. And, that's just the way it is for me. So it wasn't going to be like she gives him my phone number, he gives me a call, and then he meets me at my place. Or she gives him my phone number, he gives me a call, and I run over to his place. I mean, that's just not me. So, as I said, he was a doctor. He was an actual a chiropractor, and he had his own practice. So he wanted me to, for the first time that we meet, just meet him at his practice. I mean, at his office. So I figured that was, okay. So he gave me the address and everything, and the day came, and um, the appointment was like at 1 in the afternoon. So he had made sure he didn't have his next patient till 3. So that gave us a couple of hours to, talk and see each other and that kind of thing. So I get to his office, and I hadn't, it wasn't an area that, I mean, it wasn't an area that I was familiar with, but it was a really nice area. And this is when I lived in Michigan, so all of the you know places I lived in and people I knew, we were always you know in nice areas. So I get to his office, and you know how the doctor's offices have suite numbers and things like that, and you can go up or you can go down. Well, when I got to his office, when you first walk in, you can go down to offices, or you can, take the stairs and go up to, the upper level for offices. And And in Michigan we have basements, so I always think when I'm going down, I'm going into like a basement area. But when you're talking about professional offices and everything, of course, it's not a basement; it's just a lower level. So anyway, I am walking into, going down to where his suite was at, and he was sitting at at the front receptionist desk, and he looked up, and he was like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Well, I have an appointment with Dr. Will." And he said, "Well, that's not possible. I don't, my next patient isn't until 3, and I don't have anything booked right now." And I was like, "I'm not an appointment." So he looked at me and he goes, "You're Sherry?" I'm thinking, "Yes." So I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How old are you?" Which I thought was a strange question, but okay, it's a question. So at that time, I was about 33 or 34. So I said, I'm whatever age I was, let's just say 34. And he said, "Oh, for a second there, I thought Rachel had hooked me up with a little girl." Now, just to back this up, I should tell you that in my 30s and 40s, I did not look my age. I looked much younger. And so if you saw one of my previous videos when that man who didn't have a wife actually saw me, she thought I was dating her son because she thought I was a little girl too. And I'm like, "I'm not a little girl." But anyway, so we kind of laughed at that. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he had catered a lunch for us. So, when I got there, he had already had, a meal set out and everything in a area that had a table and everything. So he said, "Do you want to go, sit at the table? We can talk and everything." And I said, "Well, sure." So we sat down and we ate. And I'm going to tell you guys, one of the best first blind dates I've ever had. I mean, he was witty, he was funny. It was just nice conversation, which, it usually is for me, because, like I said, I've talked to people a few weeks and everything before I ever get to the point where I'm going to meet and sit with them and go out. So it was really nice. So before you know it, the little 2 hours flew by, and it was almost time for his patient to be coming in, and we didn't want to be there with that. And and I should say that when I first walked in, I had this long white form fitting dress on. And because I had the form back in the days where I could wear form fitting things. I don't do that no anymore. But but it didn't, it wasn't, it's like this. I don't show a lot of cleavage, and I don't do that. And this dress had a slit on it, but it wasn't thigh high. It was just like knee high, because that's the way I am. But anyway, so I think he was just kind of taken aback when I first walked in. Well, from that date, we decided, he asked me if I would be willing to see him again and everything. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. This really worked out well." Now, if you've watched my previous videos, you also know that all of the guys that I meet, whether I've met them online or met them at a blind date or someone introduced me to them, they're always very cordial, very gentlemanly, very respectful and mannerable, because, I, that's what that's the same standard that I have with them. So, I was really impressed. Well, probably about 3 days after that event, the friend who had hooked me up with him calls me. She was like, "Girl, you gotta tell me how everything went." He was really excited. He thought you were a little girl and, all of that. So I said, "Yeah, it really went really well." And so, of course, at this point, I did ask her. I said, "So why aren't you dating him?" I mean, it's a fair question. And she said that they had known each other for years, and they were really just friends, and they had never, like, been in a relationship or anything. It was always just a friend thing. So I said, "Okay, I guess, I mean, yeah, I mean, that can happen." If you guys know how Sally met Harry, they're like, men and women can't be friends. One or the other wants to, you know. But anyway, I digress. So this relationship, as it began to evolve, still stayed the same. Both of us very respectful, having fun, enjoying each other's company and all of that. Well, probably about at now 4 months later, we're actually in a relationship. So if you guys know the biblical sense of in a relationship, you know what I mean? And he had invited me. I don't even know why I'm laughing because it's not funny, but he had invited me to an event with him, to go to an event with him. And, it was something that you dress up for, look nice. It was some kind of evening deal. I don't remember. I think it has something to do with the Chiropractors Association or something like that. And so he and I we were going up to, we got in the elevator so we can go up to another flight. And you know how the elevator doors are about to close and someone kind of sticks their hand in to stop it? That happened. And this lady got on and she said, "Oh, hi, how Dr. Will?" And she said, "I haven't seen you in a while." I didn't say anything because she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to him. So I mean, he didn't hesitate, but well, he kind of paused and he said her name and said hi. And so like again, I didn't say anything, but I'm standing right next to him, of course. So then she says, "Hi, how are you?" So I said hello, and she looked at him and she looked at me and she kind of put two and two together. So she said, "So you guys know each other?" Now, because this is his person that he knows, I'm not opening my mouth and saying anything. I don't know how much he wants to reveal or say or anything. So he said, "Yeah, we do." And she kind of looked me up and down, almost like that wife did. But I still didn't say anything. I'm just standing there smiling, not, you know, oblivious to what's going on. And she says, "Oh, well, how do you know each other?" Meaning, how do you know each other? Again, this is not for me because she's not addressing me. So um, he looked at me and he looked at her and he didn't he didn't say anything. So she, you know, like I said, put two and two together. She was like, "Oh," and then she says almost, but made sure it wasn't under her breath, but she said it like she was talking to herself, not him or me, but not to, I want you heifers to hear me. She's like, "Oh, she's really young." And again, I wanted to say, "Miss, okay." I'm in my 30s. I'm not that young. And this guy, I should have said, was only like 4 or 6 years older than me. Although he did look a little older, but he really wasn't that much older than me. But and to be honest with you, I got that all my life, this whole young thing. Just as an aside, one time I was on a blind date and not I'm sorry, not a blind date, but a online date. And my daughter, one of my daughters, you know, how kids can be overprotective sometimes. And she said, I'm going with you because I want to see what this guy looks like and what he's about and everything. So we were at a restaurant and the waiter came and we were ordering drinks. And the waiter said to me, "Ma'am, I need to see some ID." And he had already looked at my daughter's ID. So I said, "Well, this young lady is my daughter. So in order for her to be old enough to drink, logically, I would have to be older than her, right?" And he looked at her and he looked at me, and my daughter looks like a kid herself. And he goes, "Ma'am, I don't want to get in trouble. Can I just see your ID?" So I was used to people like under their breath or saying something like, "How old is she?" So it didn't really bother me because I I've heard that a lot. So that was that. The elevator came to the floor that it needs to come to, and we all got off. So but it wasn't like he was hiding me or anything. I mean, when we were getting off the elevator, he grabbed my hand and we walked to our table together and he was introducing me and things like that. So, it all worked well. But I was like, are these going to be red flags? Because we see them, we don't want to, and then we convince ourselves that we didn't see them or they meant something else. But I mean, I'm just thinking maybe he had a relationship with her at some point and I don't know. And it's not really for me to play guessing games with any of these events. So back to the story here. So we're evolving really well in this relationship. And when I say really well, I mean we were going places together, enjoying each other's time. And by this time, of course, he knows where I live. I know where he lives. Of course, I already knew where he worked. So, things were going really great. And then we went to another event. Now, I should say, for me, I worked in at an organization where we gave a lot of public events. So again, I was very well known in the community, very well known at the schools. I used, teach at the schools and things like that. So sometimes when I'm out, people would recognize me and they would, come up to me and start a conversation or, just stop and talk. So that was that. And then at one point, we went somewhere together and he saw someone from his church. And, you know, I'm not a church person, I'm more of a spiritual person, as they say. But anyway, he introduced me as a friend, which is fine. I'm like, okay, it's church, I get it. But after the event, we had went back to his place and he was making dinner and everything, and we got to talking and everything. And I said, I mean, by this time we had been seeing each other for maybe 8 or 9 months. And okay, so I'll just say it. So we're talking, and I said, "So that was someone from your church?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, "So why did you introduce me just as a friend?" Which, like I said, is okay. Uh, or is it okay? Maybe it wasn't. And he said, "Well, I haven't told you this, but I'm a deacon at the church." You guys. I'm not laughing that the guy was a deacon, okay? Again, when these things happen, I'm like, how do you get to know someone 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, almost a year, and they're just now saying, "Oh, I'm a deacon." That's like saying, "Oh, I'm the minister. I ministered at my church." So I was like, "You're a deacon?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "But you've never even invited me, to your church." And when I say I'm not a church going person, that doesn't mean that if someone says, "Hey, invite me to the church," I'm be like, "No, back off. There's a sign of the cross." It's like, okay. So, red flag number, whatever. So he was like, "Well, and I get it. In the church, of course, you have the rules and regulations that you go by, and they're not, well, nowadays there are, but back in the day, churches did not go along with premarital anything, if you know what I mean. So he didn't want to put himself in that position where, he's bringing me to his church. So in my mind, you got to remember now, this whole channel is life lessons learned. So, and when you're younger, you don't, of course, have the experience or the knowledge to have those life lessons yet. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, right? So that was okay. Well, later on in the conversation, we were talking about his kids because I remember I told you maybe I didn't say that, but he had kids, but they were grown and gone. Okay, which is the mark of a true adult. If you've got kids that are grown, if they aren't gone, are they really grown? But that being said, thinking about the way the economy is today, I wish I could go back on. Okay. Things have been crazy for the last 10 years. But anyway, so he was telling me that his son was planning on visiting with him that weekend. And they were going to do some type of event together or something. And I was like, oh, okay, I get to meet them. The look on his face was the same as when that lady said, "How do you know her?" I'm like, oh, did I hit a nerve here?" He was like, no, I'm, when I divorced his mother, which happened years ago, so it wasn't like he was recently divorced or anything like that. Um, because at the time that he had divorced her, he was still in school for his degree to, for from college. So this was years ago, and the kids were much younger and everything. So he said he was trying to cultivate a relationship with his son, and he didn't think it would be the right time to introduce him to, someone that he's seen. Uh, So, and that's fine. I get that. But again, if this is the idea or the way things would be, then it's why not just be open and honest about that? You know, don't wait till he's about to visit you and then be like, oh, you can't meet him. So at this point, now I may have been like a somewhat n- naive or not knowing how things could be, but when things make you feel a certain way, for me, okay, again, then that's when I start saying, okay, is this going to be the pebble upside the head or is it going to be the boulder? Because I've told you guys all before, I'd rather have the pebble, okay? So, I'm thinking, and by this time, of course, he had met my girls. You know, they weren't grown and grown; they were little, they were younger. Um, but what was I going to say? Yeah, so and he had met my friends, and th- like I said, people come up to me at public events and stuff, and I would introduce them and things like that. So it wasn't like I had anyone to hide him from. And if I were going to church, I would have at least invited them to my darn church. Okay, so when he said that, a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, okay. He told the lady in the elevator. He didn't even say anything to the lady in the elevator when she asked, which again, like I said, that's on him. I'm okay. Then other person, he introduces me as a friend. And then with the church thing, never been invited, and you're a deacon. And now the son thing. So I was like, he's either he just isn't ready to be in a relationship right now, or he wants to be in a relationship where he worries about what everyone else around him thinks and not worried about being a grown ass man. So as I said, and as you guys watch my previous videos, once I get it, I've got it. You don't have to tell me twice. So I looked at him, and it's always the look on our faces when they're like, oh shit, what have I done? And I was like, you know, this isn't working out for me. And he was like, what? Just because I don't want you to meet my son right now, you'll be able to meet him eventually. And I was like, no, you don't have to worry about that. I don't want to meet your son. Don't want to go to your church, and you don't have to tell anyone ever again that we're even friends. So he was like, why don't you just calm down? It's not like that. Everything is going really well. I really like this relationship and I want to stay in it. Well, the person who's not doing the right thing always wants to stay in it, don't they? But anyway, so I was going to walking toward this door, and this is where you'll see where I said I crossed the line, and I again never did it before, and certainly never did it again. But by his door, he had this a couch. So you know how you can like sit on the edge of the arm of the couch where you're not supposed to, because all mothers and grandmothers tell us to get off the couch like that. But that's how he was. He went to the door with me, and he kind of sat there as he's talking and trying to convince me not to leave and not to be upset and that kind of thing. And I don't get upset, you guys. As I told you before, I don't get upset. I'm not. I mean, you're kind of angry or hurt, but I'm not. Don't seek revenge. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm like, no, it's just over. Well, his door had these like four different types of locks, and the way you had to get out was you had to. I know it's goofy as hell, but when you unlock the top one, like the second one kind of clicks back to lock, so you have to unlock the second one and then the top one and then get the other one. I'm like, so I'm fooling with these doggone locks, and they're relocking and unlocking, and by this time I'm like, if he doesn't open this damn door. So I was like, open the, would you please unlock your door? And he was like, you've been here 1,000 times. You know how to unlock the door, you guys. So I said, I just want to leave. Just unlock the door so I can go. And he was like, if you're at the point where you can't unlock the door, that really means you don't want to go. So now he's not a chiropractor. He's a doggone psychiatrist. Okay. And remember, I did one of those in one of my previous videos. So I was like, when he said that, and I'm in his place, and I'm like, I just need to get out. I just took both my hands and pushed him off of that damn couch. And remember, he was sitting on the armchair, so he was already unbalanced. And he fell backwards, and then he kind of fell over to where the table was at. And I was like, and it was like looking at it. I'm not laughing at that, trust me. But it was like looking at it in slow motion. I saw myself go, and then I saw him flail. Okay, now it does look like I am laughing at it, but I'm not. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. And then he got up and he looked, and I couldn't, and I'm like, did I just push him? I mean, like I said, you guys have to really remember, I taught peace negotiations, okay? So for me to have done that, it was like it was another person altogether. But and that of course let me know this is it for this relationship if I allowed it to get me to that point. But anyway, he wasn't like hurt or anything like that. I mean, he's a man. Oh, I shouldn't say he's a man. Men can get hurt, but you know what I mean. It wasn't like he hit his head on the edge of the table and we had to call 911. So he got up and he said, "I can't believe you pushed me." And I said, "Neither can I." And then he didn't say anything. And I said, "Remember, I still wanted to get the hell out." So I said, "You mind unlocking the door now?" With my silly ass. So he did. He unlocked the door and he said he'll call me later. And of course he did. And of course I didn't pick up. And at that point, it didn't have a lot to do with him. I was still shocked that I did that. I was like, because, whenever you see, or whenever I see, women and men arguing and then the lady sloth, especially in the movies, she hauls off and slaps him in the face and he just turns his head and then she slaps him on that side and he turns that way. I'm like, okay, come on. Male, a female, kid, adult, no one's just going to let someone ab- abuse them. You know what I'm saying? And I know back in the day we used to always say, boys don't hit girls, men don't hit women. But if they're protecting themselves or trying to avoid being physically assaulted, I mean, of course, they could walk away too. But sometimes I've seen guys walking away, and women are following them and want to kick them and push them. And I'm like, Okay, they'll keep making that bed. You're not going to want to lie in it." So, um, fast forward, I didn't, you know, deal with him anymore on that. We weren't dating anymore. So, I told him it wasn't him, that it was me. And of course it was me because I was the one that was the aggressor and the initiator. So, um, you know, who wants to, I couldn't see us still being in a relationship. Now, this was just probably about a year before I wound up moving from Michigan to my home state that I'm in now, that I always wanted to be in. Couldn't wait to get here. And I got a call from him after I had been here about 14 months or so. It was fine. Like I said, I don't seek revenge. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I don't get angry. I'm not trying to, ruin his life or anything. But somehow he had looked me up and found my phone number, and he gave me a call. And I was so surprised to hear from him. I was like, "Hey, Will, what's going on?" And he was like, "Oh, not a lot. I was just thinking here, and the relationship that you and I had was one of the best ones that I was in." He said, "I can't believe that I, told you couldn't meet my son. Um, I just wondered if we could put, all of that behind us." And I'm like, "There's nothing for me to put behind me. I moved. I'm in another state. I've gone on." And then he said, "I have a question for you." And I'm like, "Okay." He said, "Before you had moved, if I had asked you to marry me, would you have?" And that's why in the beginning of this, I told you I would name this guy Will, because we'll never know the answer to that. And so that's exactly what I said. I said, "Well, we'll never know." And he said, "I know." He said, "I think I messed up, didn't I?" And I said, "Well, we both did." I said, "Because I had gotten physical with you, and that was something I couldn't forgive myself for doing. It didn't have a lot to do with the events that led up to me doing that, we because we're the ones that react to an event. The events don't happen to us and make us act a certain way. We have to make a choice and make a decision and then make an action. So all of those things, even though it occurred within a matter of seconds with me, the point was that it occurred. So, he asked me if he could come visit where I was at, and I said, "It's a big state. You can visit anywhere you want." I said, "But you won't be staying with me. So if you're thinking about, coming to just visit or anything, you have to have your hotel or place that you're going to stay, and we can meet up or something like that. But we won't be meeting up to be getting back into a relationship. And he said, well, what if I were to, move my entire practice there? Because I can do, chiropractic anywhere. Yeah, you can. But again, don't do it on my account because once I've left something, it's it for me. So it was about 10 months after that, I get a phone call from a lady, a woman, and she says, may I speak with Sherry? And I go, this is she. And she said, Sherry, you were a friend of Dr. Wills, right? And I said, yes. But I noticed she said were. So I was like, oh. And she said, I'm just calling to tell you that he passed away. And I was shocked because he hadn't been sick. He was a healthy guy. He was a chiropractor. He took care of himself. So I didn't say anything for a second. And she said, are you still there? And I said, yes. And she said, okay, I just was, I'm just a friend of his, and I was just trying to contact people to let them know. So was curious. I said, well, how did you get my phone number? And you guys know I'm an author and, I have books. And so he had a couple of my books and I had written and, had signed the books, I had autographed them. And so she said she got my information from there. And I guess there was a letter that he had that I don't know, he was going to write to me or something, but he never sent. And so she thought it would be best that she, locate me and find me and let me know that. So that was the end of that one. But as you all know, I always say my mantra: knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And even today, when I'm telling this, it's just amazing that I chose. I don't want to use the word violence, but I guess that's what it was. If you're pushing someone and it's possible they could have been hurt, I mean, everyone who's violent likes to say they're not violent. But I really did some inside reflection and some more spiritual work to make sure that I put myself in a place where things would not get to that level with me in any type of relationship, whether it's a friendship, a sexual relationship, a partner, a coworker. I mean, any of that, because anything could get out of hand really, really quickly if we allow it to. So that's my story on the blind date one. And other than that, yeah, things were pretty good. But I'm like, if someone doesn't want to if they're involved in their church and they don't want you to go there, they're involved with their, you know, community and their family, and they're saying it's not the right time, and it's been almost a year. For me, that's not acceptable because, like I said, I didn't have anyone that I was keeping him from. So hopefully, some people can get some information as to how not to react when we're angry, when we're upset, when we're disappointed, when we're hurt. And I certainly, like I said, never did anything like that again. But that's that tale. Okay, I did tell you guys that I would do the ones where I actually fell in love. Yes, I fell in love for the first time in my life. People are going to say, well, didn't you love your husband? Um, no, but I can't. Okay, let me say this. Back in the day when you get a certain age and they're like, you need to be married, you need to have kids, you need to do this. So I kind of fell into that whole pattern. And remember, I hadn't dated or anything. So he was the first guy that I had really gotten involved with. But um, I'll go through that experience a little bit later as well. So first, we're going to talk about the time that I fell in love with my online date. But I will see you then. Bye.